So the list of those who can now be targeted may lengthen from people who actually do bad things to people who merely think bad things. And the government's definition of peddling hatred could be someone else's deeply held religious belief. Is countering extremism compatible with freedom of religion? Douglas Murray, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Aren't you a key extremist influencer? And be so critical of Islam. I mean, you're a neocon hate preacher, aren't you? Some of the things you've said.
Well, I suppose that some very extreme people might claim that. I'd be surprised if you could hold it up. If I can answer the question that we started with.
Well, you've said some things in the past. Conditions for Muslims in Europe must be made harder across the board. All immigration into Europe from Muslim countries must stop.
I've always been of the view that it's unwise to have immigration at the rate it's happened in recent years. And I think it's a very unwise thing to do what Chancellor Merkel has done the last year, to have immigration effectively at such a speed that you can't have an integrated society. That's what we're seeing, I would argue.
But if you said the same thing of Jews...
If I just finish the point. This is what we're seeing the impact of across Europe at the moment. It's a very great concern. You see, a lot of what government in this country and elsewhere is trying to do at the moment is to make up, to catch up with the effects of its immigration policies. Because if you have, as Germany has now, an extra 2% of your population coming into the country every year, I would argue you don't have a hope of having an integrated society. You don't have a hope of having a cohesive society. And as for the argument that, as it were, this is something you wouldn't say about any other group and so on, I can assure you that if any other minority group within a society had a constant record of producing a minority within it, but a minority that is significant, of people who, for instance, blow up tubes, or buses, or fly planes into the Twin Towers, or, as happened 3 years ago today, murder a soldier on the streets of London, decapitate him in broad daylight for being a member of the British Army, I would say you would say that about any other group. I think you would be deeply concerned about any group in society that had that, even as I say, as it is, a very distinct minority. Let me just remind you of one other fact, if I may, whilst you've got me onto it. Which is that a lot of other minorities, I think rightly, are concerned about this. As a gay man, it doesn't enormously please me that, as a poll fronted by Trevor Phillips the other week showed, the majority of Muslims in the UK want homosexuality to be made illegal. Not on board with gay marriage, not entirely hot with civil partnerships, but want homosexuality to be made illegal. So I think this raises all sorts of questions, and I think they're very legitimate questions to be raised, and in my view, they're not raised often enough.
Why do you believe, then, let me take it to you, for the strict enforcement of Sharia, a caliphate is an ideal society, gays are going to hell, adulterers are stoned, are those extremist values?
These are views that are not held or practiced in this country, but people that want to preach this
those
hatred
views are not
against
held in this country.
Well, let me just explain that. We've got people preaching a lot of hatred and poison against Muslims. Give me one case, even in Muslim countries, where they practice Sharia law, where they go as a routine, hold on, in routine. Most Muslim countries do not do the death penalty, they do not do the stoning, they do not do all these things. This is most Muslim countries that are supposed to run under Sharia law.
Let me...
Some do, but they are...
It shouldn't be necessary to have to shoot this down, but let me do it. Sunni, Shia, two most important distinctions within Islam. The most important Sunni state in the world, Saudi Arabia, executes people for being gay.
The greatest friend of the UK.
He crucifies people, beheads people and crucifies. Recently sentenced to beheading and then crucifixion an underage young Shia man because of his familial connections with the Shia family that the Sunni house of Saudi Arabia didn't want to live. Then let's go to the other side then, to the Shia powers. The most important Shia country in the world is Iran. In Iran, you get killed for being gay, you'll be stoned to death as a woman if you're an adulterer, or hanged from a crane if you're lucky. So please let's not have this stupid cover, because we are cleverer than you think we are. Anyone in this country can look at the internet, they can read articles. You cannot cover that over. It's fact. It's what's going on. It's what ISIS is currently trying to do in the territories that it controls. It doesn't come from nowhere. And if we're going to talk about extremism, a great deal... Let me finish this point. A great deal would be improved in this country country if people like you came into studios like this and admitted that there is a problem, and admitted that you wanted to join in finding a solution to that problem, instead of trying to pretend that the problem doesn't exist.
And listeners to recognise is that the evidence that this policy is based upon simply does not stack up. It is non-scientific because there is, Nikki, if you let me finish, there is no empirical evidence saying that an extreme form of Islamic ideology is, in fact, the cause of terrorism. And you look at the work of Martha Crenshaw, you look at the work of Mark Sageman, ex-CIA, and you look at all these other studies that have been done on it, the scholarship, and they're pulling faces now because they can't come back at this.
Whoa, hang on. Wait a minute, everybody. Wait a minute. No, hang on, Steve. No, wait a second, Pete. No, Peter, in a second. Not quite yet. Not quite yet. You say, hang on, Rizwan. You say that they can't come back, and I'm going to let them. Then you mentioned as well other religions, and I'm going to come to you, Linda, on that, because you may feel that some of your views will be marginalised and frowned upon. That was a very interesting point. Yeah. Conservative Christians. Linda Rose, what are you... And you raised this point, Rizwan. What about people of your ilk who are worried about this legislation because what you want to say and what you want to believe may be curtailed?
Yes, we're very worried.
What
sin for a man to lie with a man?
What does it say the punishment should be?
Again, the various punishments that I'm trying to remember, actually, in Leviticus.
Is it stoning?
I would have to check that, Nikki, because I'm not entirely sure.
Douglas Murray?
Leviticus does have such threats in it, and it's my view that, and I think Adam Dean said the same thing, that nobody should be criminalised or prosecuted for holding what is a conservative religious opinion. I'm the last person to argue that people can have that opinion. I think that's another thing if you then believe that as a result of your religious opinion, other people should be prosecuted. But let me just pick up on a very important point that this raises. You see, if an Anglican or somebody saying they were speaking in the name of Anglican Christianity, today, in the street, beheaded somebody in the name of the Christian God, and we came on this programme a week from now, do you think that there would be a single Anglican Christian in the country who would not say, it's disgusting, it's appalling, we abhor this? But do you think there would be anybody, like the lineup we have here, of people providing excuses or saying, how dare you talk about our religion? How dare you talk about Anglicanism? This is the problem. These two gentlemen here epitomise the problem.
Linda can respond. Linda respond. Don't worry. We've got time. What was it? You said it's racism, is it? Yeah, okay. Let's address that in just a second. Linda Rose, the Reverend...
Why didn't you call him misogynist and throw out some
Everybody be quiet. Everybody be quiet.
I am not denying the fact that the UK is probably one of the best countries, right? I was born and raised here. All I'm saying to you that if you deny a group of people the chance to articulate their identity around Islam, then what you are essentially doing is you are saying that you can be a citizen, but you cannot be a citizen who chooses to express their identity around Islam. That's what I do not engage with racism, Douglas. I would not
Rabia, we haven't heard from you. Wait, everybody. Okay, wait, everybody. After we've spoken to Rabia, thank you very much.
It is important because Peter raised some really excellent points that I think need to be emphasised. And one is that you can keep claiming that ideology and religion is the cause of this issue, but as Peter very articulately just noted, that actually all the cases that we have show that this is a political phenomenon. And in fact, even MI5's internal research on the issue of political violence and terrorism showcases that religion actually acts as a bulwark against terrorism and political violence. So this idea that it's this overzealous, irrational ideology that's driving terrorism is a complete red herring and disingenuous. And the second thing is that policies that are being introduced now by the government in the name of countering political Islamic violence are already being applied to non-Muslim communities, and the police have been surveilling the leaders of the Green Party, Cyan Berry and Caroline Lucas, who's a member of Parliament. So here we have it.
Animal rights people as well.
Absolutely, and left-wing dissidents and activists.
Douglas Murray, do you want to come back in here?
Well, just quickly, because you mentioned the thing of British values. What a lot of this is I'm not the world's greatest fan of the prevent strategy. I think it's an attempt by government to deal with a pretty insoluble problem, actually, as I said at the
Insoluble?
A fairly insoluble
That's pretty
problem.
Pessimistic.
Well, look, I mean, if you've got a choice between whether or not you believe you should follow David Cameron or Allah, a lot of Muslims will follow Allah, amazingly enough.
It's because the world is split into good and bad, isn't it?
The thing that's...
I think even Peter would take the latter, given that choice.
So let me just get back.
Black and white.
So what we
You'd follow David Cameron.
if you would just allow me to finish one sentence, you might learn something.
I don't patronise
The really interesting thing is, Nikki, is that what our government in Britain is trying to do, as a result, as I said at the beginning, of the mass immigration they've had in recent decades, is to try to build a cohesive society and to cohere society. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this government, as with the previous government, doesn't particularly have the confidence to say Britain and British values, British institutions and so on. So what are we doing? We're basically trying to make it liberal values, that Britain will be about liberal values, about gay marriage, about all sorts of other things. They've pinned this on. I, by the way, think this is a big mistake, because it's all very well saying we will make people liberals, but that doesn't mean, among other things, you make them, as it were, British or with any other sense of identity. So the interesting thing is, though, that because the British government has decided effectively the best we can do is to make people vaguely liberal, then it means that the qualifications for extremism, as it were, are exactly, effectively conservative ideas. And that is why the Islam thing keeps on posing such an issue. Because, you see, in terms of social liberalism, Islam is the slowest kid in the class. And we are all speaking at the level of the slowest kid in the class. And that is a problem that we're not going to get over for a long time to come.
Mohammed.
Let me just put it as the last word.
Do it quickly.
If everything was true as these right-wingers claim it is, why is Islam...
right-winger.
Why... No, not you. Why is Islam... why is Islam the fastest growing religion in the Western world? That says it all. It is.
That's the end of it.
That's the end of it.